Hello dear viewer, I welcome you to this lesson. It is a primary 7 class, social studies. And today we are going to continue with our topic that is about the climate of Africa. And in this, we are going to be looking at the factors that affect the climate of an area, as we have it here on our heading, factors that affect the climate of Africa, or we can simply say factors affecting the climate, or sometimes we may not find affecting and the examiner decides to use influencing. So we need to be also aware that we can also use that. So we can also say factors influencing the climate. To affect, to influence is like to determine what type of climate is going to be experienced in an area. That's what we are going to be looking at. We get this on page 89, that is on in our workbooks, for us who have the workbooks. So kindly go to that page so that you will be able to follow us. So the factors given, among others, include, we have the distance of a place from the equator. Distance of a place from the line marked 0 degrees, that is called equator, that is factor number 1. This is what we also write as latitude. We write it as latitude. Of course, when I mean the distance of a place from the equator, if this is our globe, we shall find our latitude 0 degrees is here. So this distance from the equator, north or south, is what we call latitude. Sometimes we candidates mix up the things. We have latitude and then latitudes. These are two different things. Latitude without S simply means that distance of a place from the equator, either north or south. Whereas latitudes refer to the imaginary lines drawn on a map from east to west. The other one is, we have what we call altitude as a factor. We shall be coming to explain these factors. We have relief, then we have presence of vegetation in an area. Presence of vegetation in an area. We shall be looking at how each of these things can influence the climate of an area. In your book, it is appearing as vegetation cover can also affect the climate. Then we have human activities. Human activities as another factor affecting the climate. Then we have presence of water bodies. Presence of water bodies. Sometimes we say presence of large water bodies. This can be termed as the drainage system or the drainage pattern of an area can also affect the climate of an area. Then we shall also have what we call prevailing winds. Then we shall have ocean currents. Ocean currents. So these, among others, are the factors that influence, factors that affect the climate of an area. Having looked at that, we are going to look at how does each factor affect the climate. One, we said we have distance of a place from the equator. How does this affect climate? You will find that areas which are near the equator, tend to experience what we call equatorial climate. Reason being, and these areas always tend to have a lot of rainfall experienced. These areas receive a lot of rainfall. Reason being that the sun shines directly to that line of the equator, which means that because of this sun hitting the equator, there is a high rate of evaporation or transpiration. So due to that, due to those processes, we shall have rainfall experienced. And these areas always experience what we call convectional rainfall. Convectional rainfall. Which means we are going to look at how we say when the sun is shining onto that line of the equator, you'll find that if in that area there is a water body, so we are taking this as our water body, and we are saying the sun is shining, hitting the water body. So what happens here is we are going to have evaporation process taking place. Evaporation, remember, is that process by which this water escapes into the atmosphere in the form of vapor. This process is the one we term as evaporation. And as a result of this evaporation, this this vapor is going to condense in the atmosphere, that is in a process that we call condensation. Condensation. Take serious note of the spelling. And at the end of it all, these clouds formed will eventually result into rainfall being experienced. And this is convectional rainfall. So that is how this line can affect, or the distance of a place from that line can affect the climate of an area. Areas near the equator receive direct sunlight. Therefore, these areas are ever hot, and because of the heat, such processes take place. Evaporation takes place, transpiration takes place, and clouds will be formed, which eventually bring rain. We need also to have a clue on the other question that is always asked to us, that why are areas along the equator ever hot? Why are these areas ever hot? I have said these areas receive direct sunlight. That's why they are ever hot. So that is how we have this affecting the climate. Then the other one is we have altitude. Altitude, we simply define it as the height of land above the sea level, which implies that we have some areas which are on a lower altitude, whereas some areas are on a higher altitude. So here I would draw our mountain to make us understand this well. So you will find that if this is our altitude, you will find that areas which are down here, people who live in low, or like in areas which are on a lower altitude, tend to experience hot temperatures, meaning here is warm or hot. And remember we said the higher you go, the cooler it becomes, meaning that the temperatures here are different from the temperatures up this way. Up is cooler, down is hotter. And that's why we shall be asked questions in our candidate class. Why are areas, why is this area hotter than the other? Why is the other area cooler than the other? When you get such a question, kindly note that it is due to altitude, in that areas which are on a higher altitude are cooler, whereas those on a lower altitude are always hotter or warm. So that is how altitude also affects the climate of an area. The other one is we have relief. When we are looking at relief, we are looking at the nature, the topography, or the landscape, the appearance of the landscape in an area. And this takes us to the formation of what we call orographic rainfall, that we can also term as relief rainfall. You shall find that in most cases, this is a mountainous area. So what happens is wind blows, and this warm wind will carry the moisture, which it will lose into the atmosphere. Remember, this is not again convectional rainfall. This is now relief rainfall. We are justifying, or we are understanding how relief can affect the climate. So we are looking at a relief of an area, and we say that we can have the sun here. We have our sun. Of course, this sun shines, and we are having the wind blowing, and the wind blows wanting to cross to the other side of the mountain. But because of the mountain being a block here, it cannot pass through the mountain. So this wind, on picking some moisture from this water body, it now has it, and it goes into the atmosphere, where it will lose that moisture into the atmosphere, forming these clouds as we see. Then finally we shall be having this rain these clouds resulting in the formation of rain. So we shall have rain experience like this. So what we also need to see is that in the formation of this type of rainfall, we are having the climate modified on one side of the mountain, whereas the other side of the mountain does not have good or does not receive rain. Reason being, when this wind loses the moisture, it now becomes dry, and therefore it descends to the other side. This is now dry wind descending. Dry wind now descends to the other side. And because of that, we shall say we shall be having two sides in this diagram. There is one side this way, which is receiving rainfall or which experiences rainfall, and then we have the other side which does not experience rainfall. We give these names. Sometimes children in a candid class always make minor mistakes. When we talk of the two sides of a mountain, we are looking at the side which receives rain, and that is the side we give the name as the windward side. Whereas the other side which does not receive rain is given the name the leeward side. Leeward side. The windward side experiences rainfall. The leeward side, which can also be termed as the rain shadow, it is just the shadow, but not a rain. So that is what happens here. Therefore, we shall be asking you questions in this context. Which side is better for growing crops? Of course, we know crops require areas that receive a lot of rain. So your side will be windward side. Don't say side this, side the other. No. Sometimes they can give you just letters. This is side B, this is side A, then they tell you name side B, name side A. The worst mistake you will make in your life as a candidate is you telling the examiner that this is the left side, this is the other one is the right side. That will be the worst answer, the worst mistake you will have made in that examination room. So avoid that. For us, we shall give you letters to guide you, such that we can tell you, give the name part marked B. So you will know part B is receiving rain. Therefore, it is the windward side. So I say the side which is better for crop growing is this. Give a reason. Automatically it is receiving rainfall which supports crop growth or crop growing. So that is a very simple reasoning. Then the other tricky question is, you can also be asked which part is suitable or which part is better for irrigation farming. Remember, we looked at irrigation, we said this is the artificial supply of water to drier areas, which means water is to be supplied to a dry area, meaning that it is the dry area which is good for irrigation. We can't again have irrigation in an area which receives already rainfall. No. So we need to be aware of that. So this is how the nature of or the relief of an area can affect the climate. Areas which have mountains can help in the formation of relieve rainfall as we have looked at in our diagram. Next, let's look at, we have the presence of vegetation in an area. How does vegetation, sometimes they can ask us, how does a forest help to modify the climate of an area? To modify means to make it better. You get it? So, if, for example, we have vegetation, and of course when we are looking at vegetation, we are now taking these thick forests. For example, I have my thick forest here. As you can see, this is a very thick forest. So this is my forest which I have here. So I have my forest here, and we are going to look at how does this forest also help to bring rain. How does it, what happens such that at the end it can help to bring rain. Of course, we shall be able to realize that when the sun shines, this is the sun, so when the sun shines, these are the sun rays hitting the forests. What happens is, we say that trees tend to lose the excess water into the atmosphere in form of vapor. So this, that is through the help of the leaves, that is the stomata. So these trees are going to what we call transpire. Sometimes children make a mistake. You say trees evaporate. No, that one is for the water bodies. Trees have what we call transpiration. So when these trees transpire, or due to transpiration, this water vapor from the leaves goes in the atmosphere to form what we call the clouds, of which clouds, of course, this is still the what we call condensation. So that is now cooling. The winds cool, forming the clouds that will eventually result into the formation of rain, and we shall be having rain pouring in an area. How did it happen? It's because of these trees which helped to transpire. So that is how the presence of vegetation in an area can influence, can affect or determine the climate of an area. So for this case, we shall have the climate very nice to live. But if the area didn't have this vegetation, then you would know that this area will not be having what? That would mean that rain formed. So that is what we need to note about that. Then the other one, maybe second last week, we can be talking about talked about vegetation, I mean water bodies already. Let's look at human activities. We are looking at how do human activities affect the climate of an area. How do human activities affect the climate of an area? Now, human activities are defined simply as the activities that people do, that a human being does in the environment where he or she lives, and these activities can be done for several reasons. So we can have man doing them to survive or to get how to live. But we need to note that as man or as people do these activities, there are two things that are possible that can come out. One is these activities that this man is doing can lead to the destruction of the environment. Then also we can also have the other way around, that these activities that this person is doing can also lead to they can modify the climate, or they can make the climate good. Which means that when we are looking at human activities, we are going to be looking at two groups or categories. we have the ones which can modify. Let me begin with those. They are the ones which can make the climate good. We call them positive human activities. Positive human activities. Now, what are the examples of these kind of activities? We are saying the ones which will make the climate look good. Which means, if a man grows trees, we call it afforestation. Planting trees where they do not exist. So you'll find that these trees that this person plants will later on help in rain formation when they establish. Like we're looking at from the diagram that we have just rubbed. We were looking at a forest helping in the formation of rain. Which means when people plant trees in an area where they did not exist, these trees can help to modify the climate, and that one becomes good. Secondly, we also have what we call rain afforestation. Rain afforestation, that we are looking at as the growing of trees in an area where trees were cut. It's like replanting. They were there but were cut. So the growing of or the replacing of the cut down trees is what we can simply term as rain afforestation. Or you can simply say rain afforestation is the growing of trees where they ever existed but were cut. Simple as that. So when man replants, of course, the trees that he will replace will eventually grow and will help in rain formation. Then the other one is we have what you call bush. Bush what? I know you are running to bush burning. This is bush fallowing, not bush burning. Bush fallowing, we are looking at leaving the garden, leaving land, leaving the grass to grow, to establish in that piece of land without destroying it, leaving the vegetation to grow. So when people leave vegetation to grow in areas, you will find that that vegetation will be helping in rain formation. So that is what we can put as another positive activity. Then lastly, we also have what we call agroforestry. We have agroforestry, which we define as the growing of trees and the crops on the same piece of land. Now, the trees which are grown, of course, I have said will help in rain formation, and that one becomes a positive human activity. So these ones here are good activities that human beings can do in their environments because they help to modify or to improve on the climate of their areas or in those areas where they live. Then the other second type of these activities, remember this was number one, so the second one is here, this is one. The second category of these activities are the ones that we call the negative human activities. Negative human activities. Now, if we are asked to tell, we say the positive human activities are the activities that modify or that improve on the climate of an area. That is how simple you can answer them. Now, we are looking at negative human activities. What are these ones? Here we are looking at the opposite. These are the activities that man does in the environment and will lead to the destruction of the environment in that area. Which means they lead to the spoiling of the environment in that area. They affect the climate negatively. Now, if we are asked which activities can those be that man can do and they can affect the climate in a bad way, we have man doing what we call deforestation. Remember, deforestation means the cutting of trees on a large scale. So if man clears trees that would help in rain formation, automatically we expect the climate to become worse. This area is going to receive a lot of sunshine, prolonged sunshine, which can lead to desertification. That is an area turning into a desert. Then the other one is bush burning. As you wanted to bring it, we are now bringing it here. I know someone must have wanted to bring it the other side. We are having two different issues here, my friend. There is bush burning, bush following. Bush following, we say this one is good because vegetation is left to grow in an area. Bush burning, we are looking at setting fire to burn the bush. And as a result, the fire is going to clear the vegetation that will help to bring rain, and it becomes a bad or a negative human activity. We have others. We have overgrazing. We can have lumbering. We need to note the difference between lumbering and deforestation. We say deforestation is the cutting down of trees on a large scale, meaning trees are cut whether mature or the ones which are still, young. But here in lumbering, we are looking at the selective cutting of mature trees for timber. So if it goes ahead, or if it goes on happening, people, these lumberjacks, are removing these mature trees, removing these trees, you will find that it will bring an impact. It will bring a bad result or effect at the end of it all. And you'll find that all these big trees will have been finished or exhausted, and the area will not again be able to receive a lot of rain. Reason being, the trees that will help in rain formation were removed. Then we're going to look at another factor that is about the prevailing wind. I believe we have understood this. Prevailing wind. Prevailing winds. That is our next factor that we had. Here we are saying that prevailing winds are the winds that blow towards a particular direction, that is in the course of the year, that is at a given time in a year. So what we shall also understand here is that we have some winds that are like we were looking at on the other side of the formation of relief rainfall. We're looking at the other wind that picked moisture and it lost the moisture in the atmosphere, which helped to make clouds, and finally rain comes. So we have warm moist winds bringing rain, as we are having on our page 92. Warm moist wind bring rain, meaning the ones which are warm and moist. We call them warm moist wind. Meaning these ones are having moisture. They contain some, in the lower understand, one would say some water, but that's not water, that's just moisture. So that is, these ones will bring rain, of course, when they lose the moisture into the atmosphere. And then we have the dry winds, dry cold winds, which do not bring any rain to an area. So that is also what we need to note. So when we go to page 94, it gives us, I think we already finished talk about altitude. We say the height of land above the sea level, areas on a high altitude, we finished to look at that. So we are going to be looking at our next factor, which happens to be the last according to the list that we gave, that is ocean currents. We are saying ocean currents are large masses of wind, masses of water that flow in a particular direction. Masses of water flowing towards a particular direction, in an ocean. And when we look at the types of ocean currents, we have got the two. We have the warm ocean currents and then we have cold ocean currents. Now, something simple for us to note is that the warm ocean currents, like we have the cold ocean currents. Let's begin with the cold ocean currents. We are saying the cold ocean currents flow from a cold area to a warm area. From a cold area to a warm area. They flow from cold areas to warm areas. And this type of currents do not bring rain. As we have on our page 98, we are saying the cold ocean currents, they are caused by the dry winds which blow to dry conditions. And when these winds blow to the dry condition, by the time they reach the dry condition, they will have lost the moisture, the coldness, they become dry. And for that case, we shall have the cold ocean currents bringing no rain to an area. Whereas the warm ocean currents are the ones that blow from warm areas, that is to cold areas. And when they blow like that, when they reach the cold areas, of course they are warm. Now they pick the moisture and they will help now in the formation of rain, and an area will be receiving the rain in an area. So that is how ocean currents affect the climate of an area. We have the cause, what brings ocean currents. We have the prevailing winds, and then also we have the differences in air pressure that is in an area, resulting into what we call the ocean currents. Page 100 gives us the influence of climate on human activities. In other words, we are looking at how does the climate influence or determine the human activities that people are going to be doing in an area. It tells us that hot areas influence of climate. Influence of climate on human activities. So we are going to be looking at how do these different areas determine the activities that people can be doing in that area. We are saying that areas which are hot, or people who live in hot areas, of course hot areas, we can't be looking at semi or arid climate. People who are in the arid, this is what we call desert. Don't get lost. Desert or arid areas. So what happens, you will find that people who live in such areas, one, they can also carry out some activities like farming, that is crop growing. Only that crop growing has to be done through what we call irrigation. So they can only carry out irrigation farming. Reason being, the areas do not receive a lot of rain. That will help that will help the crops to grow well. So irrigation farming has to be introduced. Then we also have animals with large eyelids and large hooves. Of course, here we are looking at camels. These people who live in such areas rear camels. Sorry. They rear camels. You will find that those are the animals. The camel is an animal that can withstand the harsh weather conditions. You will find that it has its features that enable it to survive or to live well in desert areas. For example, if we look at the adaptations of camels to survive these desert areas. So we are looking at what enables a camel to live well, to survive in a desert area. We are saying in our notes that animals which have large humps. Of course, we know how a camel looks like. So there are things there. The humps of these camels have got the fats. These humps have got fats which can be broken down into or to generate energy. That's why you find that a camel can withstand, it can move for long distances without getting tired. Why? There are fats stored in that hump which are then broken to generate more energy. And you'll find the animal continuing to move or to do work. Then the other one is, we have these camels having hard eyelids. Their eyelids are very hard. You will find that even if they are hard to protect the dust from entering or destroying them. They have large eyelids. Then when you look at their hooves, before you look at the hooves, we have these camels having long eyelashes. Camels have got long eyelashes. We are looking at this hair here, which is found on top of your eye here. You'll find that those long eyelashes help this camel to always blink and trap, that is, prevent the eye, or to prevent the dust from entering into the eye of that camel. So that's why those camels have got those eyelashes. When you look at a camel, you will see that. You find they have very long eyelashes to trap the dust or to prevent dust from entering into its eye. And then we also talked of the hooves. We say these camels have got flat hooves, which they have a big part, it's not sharp, it is flat in that it enables it to move easily, that is on that sand. Remember, these deserts are having that sand, and that is where the animals are mainly kept. Camels are mainly kept for transport. That is a major reason for that. And then also, of course, this weather is hot. These ones were under camels, so we can remove this. Because of this area being hot, people wear light clothes. People tend to wear light clothes. Of course, it's obvious that you cannot again it is hot, again you are wearing a sweater. It's hot, you are in a jacket, you're in a suit, whatever. So what happens to people in those areas, you find people wear light clothes so that they don't feel a lot of heat. And then also, these people wear what we call the turbans. Still in this kind of attire, they wear what we call turbans. Now, what are the turbans? The turbans are those veils, something like a veil, a ring that these people wear, like that cloth that they put on their heads. You find people in desert areas wear those things on their heads, they wrap cloth on their head, and you can be asked that as a candidate. why do people in desert areas wear turbans? Or what name is given to that wear which they put on their heads? So you need to be aware of all that. So they wear these turbans to prevent their hair from getting, to prevent wind from maybe entering their hair, that is spoiling it, and also to prevent their heads from being hit by the sunshine. Remember, those areas are very hot, so the places they receive a lot of heat from the sun. So what happens to such people, to such areas, people wear those veils on their heads such that they prevent their heads from direct sunlight. Then also, in line with these desert areas, you will find that people build houses with flat roofs. That's another influence. Or what people do. People build houses. People build houses with flat roofs. Which means that if this is someone's house, someone builds a roof which is flat. Remember, you will find that for some areas, for example, people who live in the equatorial rainforest, for them they build houses which are having slanting roofs. So you will find that if this is someone's house, this person is building the roof which is slanting, as we can see. The roof slants such that when when rain pours here, this rain is laid down or it slides because the roof is slanting. But now, people who are in desert areas don't receive rain. They don't receive too much rain. So what happens is they build their houses like this. Secondly, why these people build houses like this is that this will help this roof from being blown by the wind. So that is, if we had the reasons, we have said to prevent the roof from being blown by the wind. And then secondly, they are in areas that do not receive a lot of rain. And the third reason as to why they build the houses with flat roofs is that they can use this for storage. They can use such roofs for storing their other items. Of course, at night, someone knows there is no rain coming, so someone can even keep his clothes there in the morning, wakes up, he gets them and puts on, and person goes. So that is what happens. Then, we also need to go back to the other side of the light. We say these areas have a lot of sunshine. They receive a lot of heat from the sun. And we shall be asked questions, why are desert areas ever hot? We need to note these desert areas are very hot during the day. And at the same time, these areas are very cold during the night hours. So we as candidates should be able to give reasons as to why desert areas have this kind of behavior. So what we need to note is that the whole point is on the absence of clouds. So during the day, the sky is clear, which means there are no clouds that would help to trap or to absorb the sun rays. So you'll find that the area receives direct sunlight because of the absence of clouds, or you say due to clear skies. That one is point number one. Then we come to the second one. Why are these areas then cold at night? You will find that these areas are very cold at night because still the clouds that would help to make the climate or to generate some warmth at night are not there. So still we shall go back to due to the absence of clouds at night. So that is a reason to give to those answers, to give to those questions. We have problems as people live like this. We move to problems that are facing people who live in such areas. The first one we are saying these people lack like water, shortage of water and food. Remember, in such areas, people grow crops that can mature very fast, like millet, sorghum, those ones which can mature very fast and they can harvest them because the area does not receive a lot of rain. So there is a problem of food and water. However, we shall also be understanding that much as water is a problem, we have some areas in a desert where water can be got or where water can be accessed. We have what we call an oasis. That is, if it is singular, if it is one. If many, we call this oasis. Get the spelling. So this is plural. So, in desert areas, we have the oasis as areas where water can be found. You'll find that there is a small oasis here where water can be found. And this is the area on its shores here. That's where people can grow some crops because the soil is somehow fertile here. The soil is somehow fertile. This area can receive some rain. So this is what happens, and you find even other vegetation grows from there. So this is what we call an oasis, a place in a desert where water can be got or accessed. So when it comes to tourism in desert areas, of course we know we have those tourist attractions in desert areas. One, we have talked of the oasis as tourist attractions. And then we have also what we call the sandy dunes. Sandy dunes, we are looking at the heaps of sand. We have always explained this. Heaps of sand in desert areas. So you find as wind blows, it tends to blow, to collect. The wind keeps on collecting that sand and it forms a pile, it forms a heap. That is what we call sand dune. The other problem is too much heat. That we said people try to avoid it by wearing turbans. And then we also have the sandstorms. Sometimes these sandstorms bury some people. You will find when we look at the Trans-Saharan trade, when we continue learning in our class, we shall find that was a trade which was carried out across the Sahara Desert, and find that some of the problems were that some people ended up being buried by the sun. As the sun blows, it blows you down and the sun ends up burying you. So that is another problem. And then we have lastly the problem of transport that we have said this problem is somehow addressed by these people rearing the camels, which are for transport. We have three animals that we need to be aware of in our primary 7 class. We have camels. We have said camels are reared in desert areas. We have got camels for transport, and we say these ones are reared in desert areas. We shall also be having donkeys that we have been singing about right from the primary 3 class up there, down there. We have donkeys that are reared in hilly or mountainous areas. And then we have horses. Horses which are reared in areas which are plain. So on plains, people rear the horses. So we need to be aware of this because the people asking us questions are very tricky and they have a lot of questions to ask us. So our intention is also to be well equipped with the knowledge such that if it comes from anywhere, we should be having the response to give. So these are the different animals kept in different places for transport. We go to the solutions. We are saying people dress in white and light clothes. I think we have been giving these solutions. People should paint their houses white to reflect sunlight. That is for those in desert areas. We are saying camels should be reared for transport, as we have already talked. And then the other one saying that people should should wear turbans. People should put on turbans, the veils that I was explaining, that they put on their heads, so that they prevent their heads from being hit by the direct sunlight, and then also preventing the dust or the soil from entering their hair. And then also construction of valley dams. Valley dams should be constructed, that is to provide water for the animals and themselves. Then we have wet areas. That was about what happens in dry areas. Now we look at what happens in wet areas. How do people living in wet areas affected? How are they affected rather? How are people living in wet areas affected? Meaning, how do wet areas influence people's activities? Here, we now look at which activities do people do in those areas that receive a lot of rain. Of course, farming is there, and this farming is the one we talk of cultivation. Cultivation, that is crop farming. Then we have, in this wet area, we expect thick forests. Therefore, lumbering becomes possible there. Cutting of the mature trees for timber also becomes, it's also possible. And then because of these forests, we can have tourism taking place. Because of this very forest, animals can be inside, which can be hunted as food, and it becomes a reason. And then we also say that these areas also should have people in these areas should build houses which are having slanting roofs. Like we are having this here. We say people in these areas build houses with slanting roofs. And what is the reason here? To allow the rainwater to flow downwards easily. Because if we also build flat roofed houses, like people who live in deserts, for them they don't receive a lot of rain. For us, we experience a lot of rain. So what happens is, you build yours with a flat roof, the rain comes, it remains on your house. So in other words, you'll be having a lake on your house, which will maybe bring the roof down and it will bury you in your own house, and your life will end there. So for us, we are wise. We don't want to go for such. People in these areas build houses with flat roofs, as simple as that. And then we also wear, due to the coldness, remember these wet areas are ever having rainfall, so the temperatures are cool or low. What happens is we always tend to wear thick clothes. Thick clothes are worn by those people. And then also we have the last one saying that thick forests make the construction of roads and railways difficult. Then we have the problems facing people who live in cool or cold areas. Those people who live in areas that receive a lot of rain. We are on page 101. We have attacks from wild animals. We're talking of forests. These forests can be harboring those wild animals, the lions, the lions, the tigers, the leopards, and these animals can tend to become dangerous to human life. So that one can be a problem. And then apart from that, still these areas can harbor pests. Some crop pests, for example, monkeys. You find that monkeys also like hiding in these forests. So monkeys can be coming, destroying the plants grown in the neighborhood. So it also becomes a problem. And then we also have these areas harboring disease vectors that can spread diseases. Like we have tsetse flies, which can be hiding in such forests, and they can spread the diseases. Then we have the problem of landslides. And landslides are always experienced in mountainous areas due to heavy rain received, or due to heavy rainfall received in that area. That will also be another problem, and we have lightning. We have lightning. Of course, we are looking at the problems. We can't add them to this. We are on the problems, and we are looking at lightning. One of the characteristics of convectional rainfall is that it is associated with, or it comes with lightning and thunder. So sometimes you find that lightning can strike a building, can strike a human being, can strike an animal, can strike a plant, anything. So sometimes those things occur and they can injure people and also destroy property. And then we also have the other problem of floods. We have the problem of floods. Due to too much rain, sometimes the floods come in. So when we got the solutions to these problems, solution number one, we are saying people who live in such areas should be given mosquito nets, treated mosquito nets, such that they are protecting themselves from the mosquito bites that would bring malaria to them. So that is that is solution number one. People should be given. We are on solutions. We have said people should be given mosquito nets. And then solution number two, still people can spray the bushes, nearby bushes, and also clearing them and draining stagnant water to ensure that these places do not inhabit these disease vectors. And also planting trees along the river banks, that one is to control the floods in an area. Then also on mountainous areas, people can plant trees still, that is to prevent or to control landslides from happening. Landslides are always experienced in mountainous areas. So people can plant trees such that the trees help to bind the soil particles together, and even if the rain comes, it cannot break the soil particles, washing the land down, causing what we call the landslides. Then also building houses with slanting roofs, we have already given it as a solution, and that helps the rain water to be laid down, that's down the roof, easily without any influence. Page 102 gives us the influence of mountain vegetation on human activities. That is, we are looking at how do mountainous areas influence human activities. We have looked at dry areas, we have looked at wet areas, now we are looking at mountainous areas. How do mountainous areas determine the type of activities that people do? So we say that in mountainous areas, of course we need to know that mountainous areas are ever cold. They have cool temperature throughout the year. Therefore, people have to, when it comes to activities, since the areas have cold climate, mountain areas, what happens here is people grow crops. Crop growing is done. Why? These areas receive a lot of rain, which means this rain will help to make the crops grow well. An example is we have mountain elgon that we say on the slopes of mountain elgon we have Arabica coffee mainly grown. Be very careful with such questions. So we are looking at such things in this context. Mountain slopes always have what we call volcanic fertile soil that support the growth, that supports the growth of some crops, and we have specified Arabica coffee growing best on the slopes of mountain elgon. And then also these areas which are mountainous, transport is not always easy. So what people do, they rear donkeys. We already talked of those animals which are reared in hilly areas for transport. People rear donkeys. And then also we have also people in these areas have to build houses with slanting roofs. to ensure that, of course, being areas that receive also a lot of rain, we looked at how a mountain can influence the climate. They also have they also have to build houses with slanting roofs. The reason is to make water flow down the roof easily. That is why they build such. And then when it comes to the attire they put on, being in a cold area, of course these people also have to wear thick clothes. That is how these people are able to adapt the situation which is in an area. Problems facing people who live in such areas, the mountainous areas. Of course, when you look at the problems, go to problems like landslides. That is number one. Landslides can occur. Eruption might occur. Some mountains can erupt. So we have eruption. Then we have a problem of people becoming very many in that area. Remember, the area is very fertile, it has fertile soil. Secondly, the climate is favoring human settlement. So people tend to become very many. And as they become very many, they run short of land. And they end up dividing the small plots into smaller pieces. That brings what we call land fragmentation. Land fragmentation is the division of land into smaller plots. I think that one we don't have it in our list. We can be adding it there. It's a serious problem facing these people. Then we have too much coldness. This is mainly during morning hours and evening hours. Those times or those hours are very cold. People experience those areas are very cold. So people have to be wearing thick clothes. And then we have the problem of soil erosion. Of course, we know soil erosion that is in highland areas. We talk of terracing as a solution. We shall be looking at those solutions when we come to that. And also there is a problem of poor transport. So if we are to get solutions to these problems, we shall be saying landslides can be prevented by planting trees on the mountains. As we say, these trees planted, their roots will help to bind these soil particles without breaking, thereby making them washed away. So by planting trees, then eruption, this we cannot prevent, but we can just relocate. People are always advised, who are always relocated. Though some people find it very difficult. Now where do we go? We don't have another area. This is our area. We have been living for some good time. So at the end of it all, the lava finds you there and it takes you. Then we have land fragmentation. That can be solved through what we call land consolidation. Then the coldness can be solved by wearing thick clothes. We have soil erosion that we have said can be controlled mainly by terracing. Remember, building terraces on a hilly area or on a mountain is the best method for controlling soil erosion. That is terracing in highland areas. And then we have poor transport. Poor transport, we have said people in those areas overcome that problem by using donkeys, and then they can also construct what we call winding roads. So you find if a mountain is here, you find that people construct a road which goes winding. A road which is like this kind of, so those are what we call winding roads. They can also be constructed on those areas to help those people, that is, to overcome that kind of challenge. I want us to go to page, we go to page 103. 103 gives us what we call the climatic or the climate change. We have climate change that we can can term as a climatic change. So climatic change, this one is taught in primary 6, meaning we are going to have a review of this. We say these are the variations, these are the changes in the climatic conditions of an area. You find that if an area used to receive a lot of rain, time comes when the area becomes dry. The area will no longer be receiving enough rain as it used to. So there are reasons that bring that, but before we look at the signs, what brings this? In the signs we say there is what we call global warming. Global warming, those are the signs, the indicators, what shows that the climate has changed. We have global warming. Too much heat received in an area, or we can be having areas experiencing floods, or we have lightning being experienced in an area, and then also we have tornadoes. That is, these are the winds that begin happening in an area. So those, among others, are the ones that bring, those are the signs to show that the climate is changing in an area. Now, what brings the changes in this climate or in these climatic conditions? We have the causes like deforestation. Here we are mainly, some of these are human caused, whereas others are all happened by, but mainly they are caused by human beings. For example, when we look at in our notes, we are given deforestation, which is done by human beings. It's a negative human activity. Remember we talked about human activities. Lumbering is there, still done by human beings. We have swamp drainage. Swamp drainage, we are on causes, don't forget. Swamp drainage. That will simply mean the removal or the reduction of water from a swamp. This can be done for different human activities, maybe human beings draining a swamp so that he can get an area where he can grow his crops, or maybe a human being is getting the water from the swamp to use it for making brick, that's called brick making, and any other human needs or human reasons as to why he wants to use the land for. So he has to drain a swamp. Remember, this swamp would be helping in rain formation, being a water body. But now if the water has been drained, automatically it will mean that the area will not be able to experience enough rain and the climate changes. Desertification comes in, global warming comes in. Then we have also the other problem, the other cause, that is what we call bush burning. Bush burning, that is setting fire to burn the bushes. Then we have industrialization. Industrialization, we are looking at setting up very many industries in an area, bringing, something like it is kind of development, but it's dangerous to the environment. And then we have emission of toxic gases into the atmosphere. That is what we call, that is what is given to us as emission of carbon. So we find that these industries, these factories, these vehicles, very many, these things with engines, let me say, of course they use the fuel, and after that fuel being burnt, they release through the exhaust. Let me use that simple understanding that we have in common. So you'll find that these toxic gases are emitted, they are released, and when they go into the atmosphere, they destroy what we call the ozone layer that will help to absorb the direct heat from the sun to us. And as a result, of course, the climate of an area changes. Then swamp reclamation, I request you cross it from that side. It's not supposed to be there. Swamp reclamation on that list of 103 gross swamp reclamation. However, we shall be able to look at swamp reclamation as a different issue here. So we are having swamp reclamation. This is going to be our last item of discussion. Swamp reclamation. So, swamp reclamation, we are looking at from the word reclaim, which means to put back something which used to be there. Something was there but was affected, was removed, was destroyed. Now we are putting it back. So in the simple understanding, we define swamp reclamation as the putting back, of a swamp. So just don't into its original status. That is how simple we can. That's why it cannot appear there, because this one cannot destroy. We are saying swamp reclamation is the putting back of a swamp into its original status, which means that when a swamp has been in an area, remember swamps are supposed to be existing in some areas naturally. And we have a swamp, by definition, we say it is a waterlogged area with vegetation. So that is an area which is supposed to be having water and vegetation naturally existing in an area. So what happens, we say that there are these human activities that people can do in these swampy areas. For example, we talked of swamp drainage. So sometimes people destroy a swamp such that they get space, maybe areas to grow their crops. Maybe they can build their houses there for settlement. Maybe they can put a road to pass by. Maybe they build factories in those wetlands. So, as a result, we have the national body in Uganda that we call the National Environment Management Authority, that is NEMA, that is responsible for the protection of these wetlands. So what happens is, NEMA people always come to rescue these swamps. So they can maybe chase people, that's displacing people from settling in those swamps, from growing crops in those swamps, and at the end, the swamps go back to their original status. When that one happens, then we shall have said swamp reclamation took place. The swamp was now taken back to its original status, other than it being used for being spoiled for other human activities. So dear candidates, for now, that is what we have managed to share, and I thank you for viewing and enjoying this lesson, and I urge you to continue subscribing for more, such that you will keep yourself updated. Thank you for now. Goodbye. May God bless you.